Welcome to Dear Tay, You Got This. This podcast is a weekly motivational love letter to those who are looking for a change, are currently going through a change, and they need just a little pick-me-up. Tay is a transformation and spiritual coach and author who understands that one small habit over 1 year can create a lifetime of growth. First, we will talk about our topic, and at the end of each episode, I will do a trinity. The trinity is a brag, gratitude, and desire. If you'd like to share your wins, questions, and trinity, please call or text 330-552-7234 to be featured on the podcast. I love hearing about your success and how you are transforming. To learn more about your host, visit her Instagram page, Phoenix of Change. In April of 2023, I found a certification program called Mental Health First Aid. As a coach, I felt that it was important for me to learn ways to talk to people, especially if they are experiencing a mental health crisis. Working with people going through trauma could be a daily occurrence, and I wanted to be prepared. During the next couple of months, I will be doing a self-care series. I will be talking about the different types of self-care and how I use them during my first year of consistent healing practices. Note that your experience may be different and that I was not actively using these techniques at the beginning, but they grew into my life. Self-care is all about putting your oxygen mask on first to be able to help others. Self-care are the activities and practices that you engage in to help reduce stress and maintain your health and well-being. It is meant to refuel you, not deplete you. The areas of self-care that can help your overall well-being include intellectual, emotional, environmental, physical, spiritual, financial, community, and occupational. In 2022, I decided that I wanted to be more consistent in my business. And one of the ways that I thought to do that was to grow my TikTok following. Now, at the time, I was making videos, but I didn't feel like they were reaching the audience that I was looking for. So what did I do? I needed to have a catch. So my catch was doing sock videos. And basically what that means is I got on TikTok every morning. I uploaded a video saying, hey, these are my socks for the day, my motivational speech, and then showed everyone my socks. Surprisingly enough, I ended up having over 230 plus pair of socks. And trust me, the collection is still extensive. Now, the 230 pairs grows every single day, every single week, every single month. But I can tell you that one of the places that I ended up getting socks from was Chakra Wonders. When I went on their website, not only did I see that they had socks, but I also saw that they had artwork, mugs, hats, and even some books. It is such a great place to go to, especially if you're looking for something that is going to... What I love about Chakra Wonders is that it's an organization that provides products and accessories to those interested in astrology, metaphysics, and self-healing practices. Their mission is to build a resort-style facility structured around modern and advanced holistic and naturopathic therapies for physical and spiritual healing. When you make a purchase, you are helping them build a holistic sanctuary for wellness and renewal. Go to chakrawonders.com and use coupon code DEARTAY to receive 15% off your purchase. That is chakrawonders.com. Chakra Wonders is an organization that provides products and accessories to those interested in astrology, metaphysics, and self-healing practices. Their mission is to build a resort-style facility structured around modern and advanced holistic and naturopathic therapies for physical and spiritual healing. When you make a purchase, you are helping them build a holistic sanctuary for wellness and renewal. Go to chakrawonders.com and use coupon code DEARTAY to receive 15% off your purchase. That's CHAKRA WONDERS.com. Welcome back to Dear Tay, You Got This. If you are listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, this will be the first episode where I'm actually putting up a video that you will actually be able to see on YouTube. This is going to be weird for me only because this is the first time that I've ever done this. I don't know what I want my podcast to look like in video form. So you guys are going to go learn, you guys are going to learn with me. So thank you for being here. This week, we are going to be looking at the self-care series in June of 2023. I'm excited to get started with this particular month because June 2023 was right after I started my new job, right after all of that emotional stuff happened with breaking up with my partner in March. And I started to really rebuild who I was and what my boundaries looked like in June. And although I had been doing that over the course of the, March, April, and May, I really started to hone in on doing that in June. So I really want to talk about that during this time. And we're going to be talking about environmental self-care and emotional self-care during this podcast. So if you guys have any questions or anything like that, you guys are more than welcome to go ahead and send them through, post them to the comments, and just let me know what you guys think of the new video format, and if this is something that you guys would like, because in all honesty, as much as I like going live and, being interactive with people, this is the first time that I'm doing this in podcast form. So I would love to hear what you think about that. And here we go. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to read you guys off my accomplishments and the things that I realized during the month of June. And in June, it wasn't really a whole lot. I think that June, I was really focused on myself and really focused on my new job and really getting back into the swing of things for myself. At this time, I had literally stopped working at my other job and I was still working part-time for the previous job that I had. So I was bringing in a little bit of extra money and doing whatever I wanted with that money. And then I was bringing in the money from my regular paycheck. So there are some things during the month of June that I did that were a little bit unusual for myself, but it made me realize so much about what I was doing for myself and how I really needed to start treating myself. Because if you guys don't remember, in May, I went and did a NET session with my NET therapist, and we were talking about how I really needed to focus on myself and relearn what I like to do and really show myself love. And I really went back and forth with her about the fact that I didn't know what that actually looked like. So it was very interesting to relearn what it is that I love to do and that I like to do and that I really wanted to do. Even with having this newfound goal for the year of self-fulfillment, I really wanted to know what that looked like and how, or was that my goal for last year? Last year was consistency. For consistency, I really needed to see what that looked like how that was going to really impact what I was doing and the person that I was becoming. And consistency was really one of those things that I had, but not really in the sense of what I was doing per se. One of the things in June that I was still doing, I was still not drinking, which is great. And I was not getting up super early. As I had stated before, I was getting up at like 6 o'clock, and that was to like get up and do stuff with my business, make TikToks, things like that. So when I started my new job, I continued to get up early, but it wasn't like super early. So I wasn't getting up at like 5:30. I was getting up at like 6:30 instead. So in this time, I've learned that if I wanted something, I can give it to myself because I deserve it. So in June, I had started buying myself shoes and clothes and even ice cream, like just things that I really wanted for myself, like things that I had thought about and was like, oh, I should go get this. And I was like, no, I don't really have the money for it. And in June, I realized that a lot of these things that I wanted to do, I could still do and take care of my bills and take care of all of the household things. And it really felt good to give to myself in that way, because I felt like before I hadn't really spent money on myself. Like I really hadn't bought myself new things or bought myself new shoes, or when I wanted something, I didn't just go out and get it, because I always was thinking about, well, I have to pay XYZ a bill, I have to do this, I have to do that, instead of really looking at it and being like, oh yeah, no, like I got this. Like things are okay. I can actually afford these things. So it really felt good to give myself those things and showing myself that I was worth what I was doing. I was working so, so hard. And at the same time, I wasn't giving myself the things that I knew that I wanted. So, whether it was taking myself out to eat at a nice restaurant or anything, like I was just kind of like, oh, well, I don't have this money to do this, so I won't do it, kind of thing. At that time, I also realized that my boundaries have become stronger. And I think we'll talk about boundaries in the sense that boundaries really aren't a way to keep people out. They're a way to show your self-respect and to help keep people in your life who actually care about you, and want what's best for you. And in June, I realized that I really needed to make my boundaries a lot stronger, and I needed to make them known, because I felt like the people around me were listening, but they weren't doing. And I'll talk about boundaries in the sense of what they are and how you can continue to maintain your boundaries without having other people, or without feeling like it's like a rule or some kind of restriction for people, because that's kind of one of the things that people think boundaries are, but in reality, it isn't. So we'll talk a little bit about that during this time. And I just realized like what I would allow and what I wouldn't allow from the people in my life, and how that really affected me and what I was doing. So those are some of the accomplishments that I had in June of 2023. Now, when it comes down to it, in all honesty, like up to this point, I had really been focused on just changing in general. Like my consistency really went into not drinking. And by this point, I had decided that I wasn't going to drink for the rest of the year. And then not only that, but I still wanted to get up early so I could make TikToks, which I was still doing religiously at this point. And I think I can't even remember when I actually stopped making TikToks every day. Like I really felt like it just wasn't where I wanted to be at that moment. The consistency was nice. I did grow my TikTok following. But at the same time, I was just like, yo, like, I really need to get back to stuff that I want to do and what I like to do. So that really goes into changing my environment and the things that were around me. So in June, what I did was I really decided that I was going to go ahead. I got this new job. So that meant that my environment at work had completely changed. My occupational environment had changed, which was super nice, because now I was going to a job that I actually liked. I was seeing people every day that I was getting to know. And not only that, but it was a lot, like the atmosphere itself was so much better than the atmosphere from my previous job. So from my previous job, I think I may have told you guys a little bit about it, but I was a paralegal at another law firm, and there I did workers' compensation. And at this particular job, we had over 700 open cases at one time. Now, some of these cases were like the same client, but it still ended up being that there were so many cases that were open that it just got very overwhelming, not just for me or the other paralegals involved, but also for the attorneys. We had 4 attorneys for these 700 plus cases. Now, if you take, I think like when I left, we had like 750 some odd cases open. So if you take that, round that up to like 800, because at any given time we were bringing in more cases, and you divided that by 4, you get 200 cases per person, give or take, right? And each of these attorneys were responsible for these specific cases, whatever it was. Now, they were actually in charge of a specific region of Ohio. So it was like kind of broken up, and basically wherever, the attorneys wanted to go, they kind of like divvied up their counties and did it that way. So maybe some people got more than 200, maybe some people got less, but it was still very much a very heavy load for all of the attorneys. So that was very stressful, dealing with all of the needs that they wanted. And also the fact that we had 3 paralegals, but one of them wasn't really doing their job. So it was really like, okay, at this point, we need a little bit more help, but it was really hard to find somebody who was going to be able to not only fit in the work environment because we were so small, but somebody who was also going to be able to do their job. I went to this new job as a paralegal, and I was the new person. So although I knew some of my shit and I learned some more things on top of that, I was still the new person involved. But I was still able to keep up with like my little bit of work, understanding that I'm working with a new system, understanding that I'm working with new people. The big difference was that we had only like 70 cases, maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more. But we had like 70 cases that we worked instead. Now, with it being a different area of law, it was still a lot of work. It's just like if when I worked at the appeals office, they had a lot more cases because it's the city. They have 13 attorneys for the appeals unit. So we had an exponential amount of like cases. Whereas in like the criminal field that I worked in a long, long time ago before that, we only had 70 or so cases as well for one attorney. So if you think about what that looks like in the grand scheme of things, it really is like at one time, depending on the type of case, an attorney can relatively work a good 70 cases and be okay. So that's where I was at in this space. Was it still stressful? Yes, because there's a lot more stuff that's needed in that area. However, not only is there the one attorney, but then there's me, and then there's my coworker who's another paralegal who also work on everything. So between us, we still touch all of the files and get everything done. But I knew that this person was going to work, and basically she had to rely on me to say, okay, are you actually going to do your job? Of course I am. So we would work on that. At this other job, it wasn't like that. There were 2 of us who were literally doing 2 people's jobs each. And then we were still trying to quote unquote train this person after a year of being there how to do their job, even though we had a manual for them to look at, even though we had everything that they needed to succeed. For whatever reason, they chose not to do that. They just chose to ask a ton of questions, not just from the very beginning, which is fine, but after a year of working there, they were still asking the same questions over and over and over again. So that was kind of daunting to have to deal with. So in that aspect, when it comes to coworkers, like the environment was so much better because I didn't have to sit and worry about whether or not somebody's going to bother me 50,000 times about the same thing that they bothered me about yesterday. And that was huge. Now it was me asking the new girl all the questions, or asking the other girl all the questions, and making sure that I was doing things right and making sure that everything was good, like from before. Granted, when I got there, things were kind of in shambles because of the way that things were left before, but I still had a nice little learning curve because I already knew what I was doing. I also had been in this area of law before. And so it really wasn't that big of a change. But being that I had not been in that area of law for at least 3 years, it did take a little bit longer for me to understand what was going on. Now, when it comes down to the actual environment, like where I was at office-wise, my last job was 15 minutes from my house. So I would just get up, put on clothes, and go to the job. Now, the thing with that is I would go to my job. We had an upstairs like area. It was kind of, when you walked in, there were cubicles, and we didn't really have people contact, not really. We had some, but not a lot. And in reality, it just really wasn't a place where I could, like, as an extrovert, really shine, right? Because I like to talk to people. So it became very difficult for me to actually do that. I couldn't do that on a daily basis. So I was just in a room with these people all the time. And tensions always got a little bit high because of, with the fact that I started as soon as COVID hit. I literally started 2 months before COVID hit. So that's a big thing. And also I think it was also just like the space and like how there really wasn't anything to look at. Like when you looked outside the windows, it was literally just like a parking lot and trees. And then you could see like the houses on the other side. But like, it wasn't anything to like look at really. If I wanted some scenery, I'd have to go for a walk down the street and up the road a little bit to a park. Like there wasn't really a lot of environment care. It wasn't really like zen. Okay. When I moved to this other office, it was like the old office, it used to be a house. I should say this, it looks like a house and it was a massage parlor before it was the law office. And the parking lot is away from the road. So you actually drive down the driveway and go into like a back lot. And in this back lot is like a yard. And when I first got there, they had just started a garden back there, which I thought was super cool. And the place next door has like a huge lawn. And then the place on the other side, they don't have a lawn. They have like a big parking lot, but it was like a lot of space. So like the environment is just more open and kind of free-ish is what it looked like to me. So it was very inviting for me to like come back there and like it not really feel like I was at work. Like when I go there, yes, I know that I'm at work, but it doesn't feel like work. I walk in, there's windows all over the place. They're huge windows and there's so much light coming in. So the atmosphere is even different. And you sit at the front desk, like you walk into the front desk and it's me. And then you have the attorney and you have the other paralegal who normally works from home, but there's also her back office. And then there's another office upstairs, which is where the HR person works. And she is technically like the office manager. And that's where her office is, which is awesome. It also looks very nice up there as well. So overall, the environment was different, which was something that I didn't realize that I needed, that I needed a place where I wasn't basically shunned off from people. Like my cubicle was literally, before I moved desks, was like, it was the front door, then it was like a wall, open space, wall. So that was my cubicle. Okay, my cubicle was like an L shape. When I moved desks, I ended up being in like a U-shaped cubicle. And it wasn't super huge because I didn't have that open space. But the back space was open and it wasn't the same. Like everything was like all lights. There was hardly any sun coming through the windows, things like that. But moving to this new place was like, I got more sun and like things were a little bit more cheery. And I can honestly say that after a year of working there, it's still the same. Like I walk in, I turn on lights, but like there's more light coming in through the windows. And looking outside is like you have the garden and it looks very zen. Right now there are trees down in the back because of the storm that we had a couple weeks ago. And so that kind of like dampens the fact that we can actually go out there and sit in the backyard right now. But if we wanted to, there's space out there where they have like a fire pit and some chairs and you could just like lounge out there if you wanted to. And it's so much more relaxing. It's almost like each place, what I will say is this, each place did give me a chance to sit back and relax and actually be an adult. I know that there are some places where people work and they're like, you have to punch in a clock every time you come in. You have to punch out every time you go to lunch. You have to punch back in after you come back. When you take a break, you have to punch out. When you do this, when you do that, blah, 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 blah. And one thing that I can say about the jobs that I have had in general, these last couple of jobs that I've had, I've been very lax on that because I hope to goodness that they believe that we're adults, which is very important when I work in a workspace. Like I want to be treated like an adult. So when I come into work, like I know that my work schedule is 8:30 to 9, 8:30 to 5. Sometimes I will get in a little late if something's going on. But most of the time I'm there a couple minutes before 8:30 to make sure that I'm actually there ready to do my work, like computer setup, everything. Um, at my other job, I would get there at 8:30 because my last job was 8:30 to 5 as well, but I'd get there at 8:30 and then depending on whether or not work was done or I had too much stuff to do or whatever, I was working until 6, 7, 8. When I moved to this job, I told them, I said, I want to be able to leave work at 5 and be off work. Like, I don't want to think about work again until I have to come in this bitch, basically. And they're like, no, we completely understand that. That's what we're looking for. That's what we're striving for too, so that, the attorney can do that as well. And I was like, sweet. And literally that is the case. Like I go into work at 8:30. Work doesn't start when I wake up. It starts when I get into my car, which is at 7:30, 7:30, 7:45-ish. That's when work starts because that's when my brain is like, okay, I'm on my way into work. What is it that I need to get done? What are the things on my to-do list that I know that these things need to be done right away? And then at 5 o'clock, and sometimes it's been like maybe like 5, I don't think I've stayed any later than 5:15, actually working. And that's usually because I get like sidetracked and start something at like 4:50 and it goes past, or maybe I'm talking to the attorney afterwards or something like that. But it's very rare that I'm leaving my office after 5 o'clock. Because at 5 o'clock, I literally shut everything down and I leave and I don't think about work. Like, I'm like, nope, don't have to think about work. I'll think about it tomorrow. And whatever's bothering me from work, I literally set that aside. It's almost like I like take my work brain and I put it on my desk and I'm like, I will see you tomorrow. Which has really been good for my self-care when it comes to my environment. Because when I come home, I actually feel like I can detach from my job. At my last job, I felt like I wasn't able to detach from my job because I was there until 6, 7, 8 o'clock. I'd come home, I'd have a couple hours to do what it was that I was doing. And then I'd go to bed and I'd be right back up the next day to go to work. And I felt like I was always at work. That's one of the reasons why I decided to start waking up early so that I can give myself a little bit more time, whether it was to work on my business, read a book, meditate, whatever it was before I went to work, so that after I got off work, I felt like I had already accomplished something for the day and I didn't have to, if I didn't want to, expend more energy on whatever it was that I was doing that day. So that was really, it was hard at first to really get a grasp of that, of like, yo, like really need to like compartmentalize work and home. It was really hard because I was like, I'm here all the time. But now it's gotten a lot better. And I think that has a lot to do with my environment. Going to work and feeling like, yes, I'm at work, but I get to see a garden when if I want to go out for lunch, or if I wanted to take a longer lunch break, I can. If I want to, do whatever it is, I can. And even though my other job was exactly the same way, I felt like I was stuck in the space of I don't actually have time off of work. And the only time that I felt like I had time off was when I was actually on vacation. And for the most part, it helped up until like that last year. It did actually help me being on vacation. But for a long time, it really didn't. It didn't matter if I took a week off or whatever. Like I'd still come back and I'd feel like, God, I just left this place. So it was very important in June to really change my environment. And I feel like a lot of times we don't think about that when it comes down to, even when it comes down to our homes. One of the things that I've realized recently when it comes to my self-care and my environment, it's really changing the way that my house looks and the things that I have in my home. So just recently I went and changed some of the pictures in my house. I have a lot of art hanging around. And one of the things I was like, okay, I really want to change what it looks like in my office. So I took some of the pictures down and I moved them and put them somewhere else. And then I took some of the pictures from downstairs and I moved them upstairs. Like I just wanted to change the environment of what it looks like. And that can be in any way that you feel. So I think it's really important that when you're looking at self-care, you're not only looking at the things that are right in front of you, or the things that you can only do for yourself, like taking a bath or going to get a mani-pedi. It really is about the different things in your space, in your vicinity, the things that you see every day, the people that you talk to every day, stuff like that. So changing my environment during this time was super important, because not only did it get me out of that like same routine where I get up 15 minutes before and then go to work, like now I get up a little bit early. Sometimes I don't, sometimes I sleep in, but I at least get up like a half an hour or so early so that I can get ready for work, and then I can go ahead and go to work. Whether I eat breakfast or not, that happens sometimes. Or if I want to get up and meditate, that happens sometimes. If I want to get up and record a podcast, I will do that. But it's all about your environment and what that looks like. Sorry about that all. I had to, I'm for the camera recording, and I realized like I look very dim. And it was because one of my light bulbs is out. So now that that's changed. Next thing is my emotional self-care during this time. So what's really interesting is that there have been a lot of times in my life where I've tried to figure out like what it is that I want in my life and what that actually looks like. And for so very long, like I thought that I knew what I wanted, and then I'd be like, no, that's not it. And we all go through these phases where we're like, okay, yes, this is something that I want. And then we're like, no, that doesn't quite feel like let's change that. Which is perfectly okay to do. You are able to change your mind on the things that you want to do in your life, the things that you want to bring into your life, how you're supported, what you like on your pizza, like things like that are able to change. And I know it sounds really simple, and I know that some of you probably like laugh, like really, like she's talking about pizza, like yeah. Sometimes we don't realize like that we want different things. And as we start to grow and become more of an individualized person, we realize like some of the things that we used to like, we no longer like. And some of the things that we no longer like, we didn't like before, we like now. So it's really about exploring yourself and understanding who you are as a person. And emotionally, it's exactly the same way. During the month of June, I had a lot of my boundaries crossed by quite a few people. And I really had to sit back and think about what that looked like. And I only say that because in March, the reason why my breakup happened, and also the fact that I lost multiple friends and things like that, was because my boundaries had started to change. The things that I started to realize in my life that I wanted emotionally were no longer available to me because for whatever reason. And because of that, I had to sit back and say, okay, is it something that I'm doing? What is it that I'm not asking for? What is it that I want? How is it that I want this to look? And just like everybody else, we understand that the world is not perfect. I am not here to manipulate anybody and make them do my bidding or anything like that. But what I understood is that there is a way that you treat people, and then there's a way that you don't treat people. And the way that I wanted to be treated, I realized that not a lot of people were actually treating me that way. Um, and especially when I was treating them in the way that I wanted to be treated. And it became very, very clear to me in June what that actually looked like. And what I did was I started to actually tell people like, no, this is no longer allowed. Whatever this is that you're doing is not acceptable. And really trying to figure out how it is that we can get from, we're doing things in a good way, we're able to listen, we're able to, reciprocate all of this. And then all of a sudden, somewhere along the lines, it changes. And now nobody gives a shit. And I couldn't understand what was really going on. So I had to sit back and think to myself and sit with myself and really understand what it was that I wanted from the people around me. And not in a, if you don't do this, then this kind of situation. When you make boundaries, boundaries are not about making rules. The boundaries that you make govern yourself. They are things that you are going to do in particular situations when things arise that you don't like, that you don't feel comfortable with, etc., etc. Rules are things that you are governed for other people. These are things that you're like, you have to do this. And usually with a rule, there's some kind of consequence. And the interesting thing about this is that not everybody knows this. Not everybody thinks like this. They all think that boundaries and rules are the same thing, which over time I had to realize is not the case. And I think going through this journey of mine from, not drinking and then realizing who I was becoming and who I am, I realized that there are a lot of things that I wanted in my life that other people did not want. I had to realize that one, that is okay. But I also had to realize that sometimes the things that other people want, because it's not what I want, I don't necessarily have to have them in my space. And I think that for myself and a lot of people, that's really hard to understand because sometimes we've been spending years with these people, months even. We might have a roommate that, we have been with for years. And then all of a sudden things feel like they've changed. And it's because our expectations have changed. Our boundaries have changed. The way that we have emotionally grown have changed. And not a lot of times we sit back and reflect on them. So when it came to my boundaries, one of the things I did was I had to sit back and I had to reflect and see what it was that I was giving to myself or what it was that I wasn't giving to myself, that I felt like needed to be there. And again, this had a lot to do with how I felt about myself and the things that I felt like I deserved in a relationship, in a friendship, and whether or not those needs were being met. And this is something that we all do. We all evaluate whether or not somebody's giving us something that we want. And a lot of times we look at it from a rule standpoint. Like a rule would be when somebody walks into my house, they have to take off their shoes. That is not really a rule in my house because I have hardwood floors. I could care less. But like, is it a preference? Sure. When you come in, if you have water on your shoes or mud or something like that, please take your shoes off at the door. That's fine. But is it a rule, as a hard, fast rule? Like, are there consequences? No, there's not. But when it comes to a boundary, you have to think about what that actually looks like to some people. Some people, when it comes to specific boundaries, it's like, I don't want people raising their voice at me, or I don't like to give strangers hugs, or what are some other boundaries? There's so many, so many. And when it comes down to it, you have to think about what it is that you really want and how does it you want that to be shown to other people. Like, how is it that, what is it that you can do to make sure that people are, upholding the boundaries that you have held to yourself? And the real answer is you can't have somebody, what you can do is you can tell somebody your boundaries, and let them sit and talk to you about them and understand like what they are, and then give them the space to do with that information what they will. And the reason I say that is because you can talk to somebody, you can have a conversation with somebody and say, hey, I would really like to just have a calm, collected conversation with you because I do not like to yell. I don't like to argue, whatever it is, like that is a boundary of mine. And you can give them a reason too. Like when I was a kid, I was never listened to, or, whenever yelling would happen, things would break and it makes me nervous, or whatever your reason, you're more than welcome to share that. But the difference is when this person doesn't uphold this boundary, it's not that you are going to punish them. There's not like some kind of like punishment that happens after they've crossed your boundary. Because your boundary governs yourself, what you want to do is you want to make sure that you understand what you're going to do, like what your actions are going to be when somebody crosses that boundary. All right. And the way that you do that, like I will say for myself. One of the things that I don't like to do, I really don't like to argue. I think that arguing is pointless. And a lot of people can't get their point across because at the end of the day, it's not about being right. It's about figuring out the solution to the problem that is actually there, right? So when that becomes a thing and I get into a place where me and somebody else are arguing, one of the things that I do for myself is I will either stop the conversation and walk away, or I will just walk away. Usually I do tell the person like, this is getting a little bit heated. I do want to step away. Give me a couple of minutes or whatever it is. That is my boundary. And what ends up happening is I will go ahead and walk away. I will do that. And usually I will come back and we'll talk about it, whether it be that day or the next day, however it ends up working out. But the thing with me is over time, depending on the situation, if I ask this person not to do this thing and I say, hey, like this really does bother me, and over time they continue to still cross that boundary, they still continue to, when we have disagreements, they want to argue and they want to do this stuff, I have the ability to walk away from that relationship. I have the ability to say, we have gone over this multiple times. You have not respected the boundary of not yelling at me, or us, when it gets heated, of like not raising your voice at me. I'm going to go ahead and remove myself from the situation. Now, most people would say, well, that's really like a consequence. At the end of the day, this person is still going to do that, whether we tell them to or not. I'm just letting them know, like, hey, this is my boundary. This is what I'm going to do if it continues. And that can be done in any particular situation. Okay. And it can be done with any boundary. Like there are some people who don't like to hug other people, and that's their boundary. And they tell people that boundary. But when people try to get into their space and give them a hug, and they get defensive, or they get like, hey, like you're in my space, the other person takes it as an offense, like, oh, I'm always here, I always talk to you, we've always been good friends, like this, that, and the other, why are you acting funny like that, this and that, da, da, da. And it has nothing to do with the other person. It really has to do with, I have told you that my boundary is not to hug me. And yet every time you see me, you try to continue to go in. So now I have to set this wall of, every time you ask me to go out, now I'm going to say no. All right. So you really have to understand what your personal boundaries are and how you're going to deal with them when people cross that boundary. And not all the time is it letting people go. Like I can honestly say at this point in my life, I am very fast to let people go once they cross a boundary. And this is mostly, I feel like I shouldn't have to tell you more than once. If I talk to you and I'm like, hey, this really bothered me, I think that this is kind of ridiculous. And I honestly think that that's going to be a boundary of mine. And if it happens again, then I'm going to have to remove myself from a situation. Some people don't even go that far. They just say, this is a boundary, please don't cross it. And then people cross it and then they decide what they're going to do with it. But when it came to my emotional health, like my emotional self-care, I really had to sit back and think about what that actually looked like, because my boundaries had been crossed so many times, because I had allowed other people to continue to do things that started to make me feel like I no longer could trust myself. I could no longer trust my words. And that was really a big thing for me. So when it came down to it, I was just like, all right, what am I supposed to do? And in June, things blew up in March. But things blew up more in June. And at that point, I really had to sit back and I really had to think about what it is that I needed to do. And I decided that in some spaces I needed to step away. And most people, the people who I stepped away from were very upset about this, because they felt like they should be able to talk to me about these things and that they could have their reactions and all this. And this is the thing. I always tell people, you can have your reaction to whatever situation it is. You're more than welcome to have your reaction. However, I get to govern how I deal with that reaction. And at the end of the day, the other person also has to see that and think, okay, there's two things that's going to happen. The first thing is this person's going to think that I'm super sensitive and I can't deal with my problems. Or on the flip side, they're going to say, okay, maybe I overreacted to this. Maybe there was a better way to deal with that. I will definitely try to do better next time. And they actively try to do it. On the other side, they're not actively trying to do anything because they don't feel like they've done anything wrong. And I really had to monitor what that felt like to me. Nobody else can tell you how to feel. And that was one big thing that I realized about this. And no matter in whatever situation it is, nobody can tell you how to feel. Even the person who is having a reaction, you cannot tell them how to feel. That is how they feel about it. But I feel like the biggest thing that comes out of that is how you turn that around and become a better version of yourself. And when it comes to building boundaries, when it comes to having conversations with other people, when it comes to understanding who they are and what they do, then you can really understand what your reaction is going to be and how you can trust yourself when it comes to future relationships, future friendships, future romantic relationships, anything. You're going to be able to determine what it is that you want out of these scenarios and how that's going to affect you going forward. And that was something that I was learning about myself emotionally. I had to look inside myself and think about why certain things triggered me. Am I creating this boundary because of a trigger, or am I creating this boundary because I feel like it's disrespectful? And I think a lot of times those things can cross lines, which is absolutely okay. But you also have to sit back and think about, am I making a rule for somebody else, or am I governing my own actions when something happens in my vicinity? If I go to the bar and I get hit on by strange men every time I go, my boundary is going to be not to be in a vicinity where there are strange men who hit on me and make me feel weird. So, do I continue to go to that bar? No. I can go ahead and find another bar to go to. I can stop attending the bar on that night, knowing that these people are going to be there. Whatever it is, you are able to govern your actions around what it is, how you feel, how comfortable you feel. There are people who don't go out in public because they don't feel they have social anxiety. So when they talk to their friends and their friends want to go out and they're like, oh, we're going to this bar and we want to hang out and that. And your friend with social anxiety says, no, I'm okay. I'm going to go ahead and stay home today. Everybody in that scenario should be like, cool, we'll see you next time. Or next time we have an event or something, we'll invite you out. Instead of, oh, you're just using that as an excuse, this, that, and the other, blah, blah, blah. Some of these things are like real things. People have social anxiety. People are introverts. Some people's social batteries are just too small and they're just like, nope, that's enough. I'm good. And we have to be able to respect that. But the biggest part is respecting yourself and your emotional needs and your boundaries. When you are able to do that, when you go out into the world and you start showing other people that you respect their boundaries, that you respect their emotions, then that's when there's this reciprocal relationship that happens where you guys actually understand each other. So the next time I go out to a party, I'm not going to invite my, friend who has social anxiety to said party. I'm going to invite this person to this little museum gathering that I'm going to, or there's only going to be like 15 people. Or I'm going to invite them to like this little tiny shindig where we're playing board games or something, like something that I know that won't over socialize their battery, right? And it's the same thing with people who invite me out. They know that I'm like, I have a big personality. I'm extremely extroverted. So if it's going to be like a small gathering, sometimes they don't invite me to it because they're like, her energy might be a little bit too big for this space. But then if they're like, hey, we're going out to go karaoke and call me up, right? So it's really about like when it comes down to self-care and understanding what it is that you need as an individual, you really want to look at how it affects you, how you feel about certain things like going out or when people are near you, or if you have beef with somebody in the friend group, and they're going to be there, just don't go. You're allowed to create that boundary. I have friends who I've told, like, hey, I'm good if certain people are going to be there because they throw off my whole vibe. I do not want to be there if that happens. I'm not telling these people that they cannot invite this person. You are more than welcome to invite this person. But if they are going to be there and I don't know about it and they show up, I will most likely leave. And that is how I regulate myself. But it's the same way for other people. That is how you can learn to regulate yourself and really understand the care that you need to give to yourself. Because at that point, it's not about everybody else. It's about how I feel. And at all times, you should be understanding who you are, how you feel, like what self-care you need. And in these particular situations, like sometimes that's just as simple as throwing away all the clutter. Or it's going and having a good cry. Or it's re-evaluating your boundaries and understanding who, what, when, where, why you want things, people in your life and how that suits you going forward. And I'm not saying that it's easy because in all honesty, it's not. When you have to throw away something that you've had for 10 years and you're throwing away because it's ratty and old and you never even take it out of the box. Sometimes you sit back and you're like, well, why do I have to do this? Why is this necessary? And you have to check in with yourself. And it's the same thing when you're like with people and understanding your boundaries and what it is that you want out of your life. So you really just have to sit back and you have to think about it. Sit back and feel within yourself, like, why do you feel this way? What is bringing this up? How can I make it so that my mind, my body, my spirit are more comfortable in my skin in these moments? It is not about always making yourself uncomfortable. Hell, people are uncomfortable just by living. But one of the things that we want to do is make our lives so much more comfortable. And we want to be able to give ourselves the things that we really want, which is the love and attention and the care that we truly, truly need. And oftentimes we forget about ourselves. And that's one of the reasons why I'm doing this series, because we oftentimes forget about ourselves. And during this last year and a half, I've been able to sit back and really think about what it is that I want and how the people around me and the things around me can truly fit in that space without me having to give up so much. And without other people having to give so much. And truly, it's a balancing act. But it takes every day to sit back with yourself and understand who you are and what you're doing and how you're going to do it. We all live our lives differently, and that is okay. But at the end of the day, you want to sit back, you want to understand what it is that you need to change. What is it that needs a little bit more care? Even right now, as I do this podcast, I'm sitting here thinking about what I'm going to do after I'm done recording, and I'm letting it render on my computer. Because after I'm done tonight, this is literally me. Like, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to relax until I have to go to bed. And that's going to be my downtime. But I can guarantee you that tomorrow when I wake up to come back in here and do more work, it's not going to be as daunting. Because I know what I'm doing. I know what self-care I need tonight to be able to move forward with tomorrow. And that's one of the reasons why I created this series, so that all of you can do exactly that. Now, before I go, one of the things that I always end my show with is the Trinity. So of course, with the Trinity, you want to brag about something that you've done or accomplished. You want to share your gratitude, and then you want to share a desire. And of course, for the purpose of my podcast, I have written down some of these things. So my brag, at the time that I am recording this, I have been sober for a year and 8 months. which is an amazing feat. I have a friend actually who gets upset that I say that I've been sober for XYZ long. And it's because a lot of times we associate sobriety with alcoholism. Um, and really the whole idea of being sober is really just like not having that substance alter your mind and really be able to have a clear head from said substance, whatever it is. Now, no, I do not claim to be an alcoholic. I don't think that I was an alcoholic. I think that I drank for convenience. I drank as a coping mechanism. I drank because I didn't want to feel sometimes. That doesn't make me an alcoholic in the terms of what alcoholism is. But does it make me realize that I drank a lot when I had big emotions? Absolutely. And being sober for me has been a true gift because I've been able to really sit back and reflect on a lot of things. Not only that, I'm sorry, I have something in my eye for those of you who are watching my video here. I have something in my eye. It really allowed me to become more clear-headed. It really allowed me to understand that I have to deal with the things that are coming up in my life. And the reason I have to deal with them is because if I don't, they're just going to sit and they're going to build up into even bigger problems. And then everything can come tumbling down. And just like stopping any habit, any bad habit, it's not easy. This is an everyday, like, I'm not going to drink today. I'm not going to smoke today. I'm not going to whatever it is, right? And I feel like that's a big thing. And I commend anybody out there who is right now, um, you know, struggling with an addiction that they are trying to give up or that they know that they have to give up and haven't even started yet. I commend you for understanding and knowing that that's something that you want and that you may need in your life. And as I go through this and tell people like how long I've been sober and everything like that, I never once tell people like, hey, like, yeah, you should totally do this, because in reality, I don't know what's best for everybody else. You know what's best for you. And all I can say is that for me, being sober for the last year and 8 months has truly helped me to see a lot of the things that I was missing in my life, whether it be for the good, whether it be for the bad, doesn't matter. I have been able to see everything that I have been missing because I was drinking. And I am glad that I decided not to do it. So cheers to me for being sober for the last year and 8 months. My gratitude is for my family. And this is for not only my blood family, but also my chosen family. I always talk about my support system and how huge of a thing it is for me to have them in my life. And when it comes down to it, like, it takes a lot for me to be able to call somebody family. It takes a lot for me to be able to call somebody friend, because I don't just use these words loosely. And when I say that I am grateful for my family, it's because we have overcome so much. And even though we may fight and we may argue and we may stop talking to each other for a little bit, whatever it is, like, we're all in different areas of the world at this point, especially my immediate family. And at the end of the day, I really am grateful that with no matter what happens, no matter how pissed off we get at each other, no matter what it is that tears us apart, we always end up coming back together. And that makes me truly happy. So I'm super, super grateful for my family. Again, blood family and chosen family, because they are always there no matter what. And my desire. This is actually kind of vague. This desire is actually kind of vague, but I desire something new and exciting. I am not entirely sure what that is, but I want something like new and exciting to happen in my life. And honestly, I don't know what that could be. But I feel like a lot of my life is already like new, and I do have a lot of exciting things happening, um, which you guys will hear in future podcasts, of course. But there's a lot of things that are new and exciting in life in general. And I'm at a point now where I just want to go do more exploring. I want there to be more. I'm super excited for just more. So that is my Trinity. And I hope that you guys enjoyed this podcast episode. If you got anything, or if you want to leave any comments or any questions, go ahead and do so either in the comments, or you can send me an email at info@desirablephoenix.com. You are also more than welcome to text the text line at 330-552-7234 with your Trinity. Any questions, comments, concerns, whatever you'd like to send me, you are more than welcome to do that. And I will see you guys next week. Bye. Thank you for listening to Dear Tay, You Got This. If you liked this podcast episode and found it helpful, please subscribe today and share this episode with a friend. If you have any questions, comments, wins, or would like to be featured on this podcast, please call or text 330-552-7234 or email info@desirablephoenix.com. See you next week.